Disturbing social media posts from the man deputies accused of killing his mother, cousin, and another woman Monday night.
It was just past 9:30 on a Monday night when David Valentine heard the arguing upstairs at the Motel 6 on 67th Street Circle East in Bradenton, Florida. He was settling in for the night in his ground floor room when the shouting began, voices raised in what sounded like a heated family dispute. Then came the gunshots, for distinct pops that shattered the humid June air. What happened next would haunt Valentine forever. A young girl's voice pierced through the night, desperate and terrified. "Help me! Help me! My mom's been shot! My mom's been shot!" The raw panic in her screams sent chills down his spine as he realized this wasn't just another domestic disturbance. Valentine grabbed towels and rushed upstairs, his heart pounding as he burst through the door of room 207. Inside, he found 48-year-old Tanisha Scott lying motionless, blood pooling beneath her body. Her two young daughters stood frozen in shock, tears streaming down their faces. But the most devastating revelation was yet to come. The person who had just executed their mother in cold blood was someone they trusted completely, someone who should have protected them. Their own brother, 28-year-old Javante Bryce. This wasn't just another tragic family shooting that would fade from headlines in a few days. What investigators discovered about Javante Bryce would expose a web of forbidden relationships, deadly secrets, and a man so desperate to hide his shame that he was willing to murder anyone who threatened to expose him. The truth behind his killing spree was more shocking than anyone could have imagined. Bryce had been living a double life, engaging in an intimate relationship with his own cousin, a secret so damaging to his reputation that he believed murder was his only option to keep it buried. Over the course of just 1 hour on June 24th, 2024, this Florida man would claim 3 innocent lives, including his own mother, all to protect a secret that would destroy his carefully constructed image. But secrets have a way of surfacing, even when they're buried beneath bodies. And this one would ultimately cost Bryce everything, including his own life. If you think you know where this story is going, think again. Hit that like button if you're ready for a story that will leave you speechless, because what unfolds over the next few minutes will challenge everything you thought you knew about family loyalty and the lengths people will go to protect their darkest secrets. This case has twists that will make your jaw drop, and I guarantee you haven't heard anything like it before. So buckle up, because we're about to take you through one of the most disturbing and complex murder cases Florida has ever seen. Trust me, you're going to want to stay until the very end. June 24th, 2024 started like any other Monday night in Manatee County, Florida. Families were winding down from their day. Children were getting ready for bed, and the summer heat was finally beginning to break as evenings settled over the Gulf Coast community. In apartments and motels across Bradenton and Palmetto, people were going about their normal routines, completely unaware that a storm was about to tear through their quiet neighborhoods. But for Javante Bryce, this Monday night would be different. Something had been building inside him, a pressure that his own sister would later describe as him acting strange. By 9 o'clock that evening, that pressure would explode into violence that would leave 3 women dead and an entire community traumatized. What started as threats against an ex-girlfriend would escalate into a multi-county killing spree that would end only when law enforcement cornered Bryce at the Georgia state line in a deadly shootout. 28-year-old Javante Bryce was a man living multiple lives across Manatee County. To understand the monster he became that night, you need to understand the complex web of relationships he had created over the years. Bryce was the father of 12 children, yes, you heard that right, 12, scattered across different women and different households throughout the area. Sheriff Rick Wells would later describe Bryce as having many children with multiple partners, a pattern that painted a picture of a man who struggled with commitment and responsibility. His relationships were complicated, messy, and often overlapping. Former girlfriends, baby mothers, and family members all orbited around his chaotic lifestyle, creating a volatile mix of emotions, jealousy, and unresolved conflicts. But beneath this already complicated personal life lay something far more disturbing. Bryce had been harboring a secret relationship with his own cousin, Sequoia Starkey Jonquilla Bryce. This forbidden connection wasn't just morally questionable. It was the kind of family scandal that could destroy reputations, tear apart extended families, and follow someone for the rest of their life. For a man already juggling multiple relationships and trying to maintain some semblance of respectability in his community, this secret represented his worst nightmare coming to light. In the days leading up to the massacre, those closest to Javante Bryce began noticing disturbing changes in his behavior. His sister, who would later play a crucial role in saving one woman's life that night, told investigators that something was off about her brother. He wasn't acting like himself. There was an agitation, a restlessness that she couldn't quite put her finger on. The pressure of keeping his secret relationship with his cousin hidden was clearly taking its toll. Bryce was becoming increasingly paranoid about exposure, worried that someone might reveal the truth about his forbidden affair. In a tight-knit community where family reputation mattered, this kind of scandal could destroy not just his own standing, but impact his children, his mother, and his extended family. His sister's observation that he was acting strange would prove to be a massive understatement. What she was witnessing were the final warning signs of a man on the edge, someone whose carefully constructed world was about to collapse. The mounting stress of maintaining his lies, combined with the fear of exposure, was pushing Bryce toward a breaking point that would have deadly consequences. Unfortunately, no one realized just how dangerous he had become until it was far too late to stop the violence that was about to unfold. At exactly 9 o'clock on that fateful Monday evening, Javante Bryce walked into the Palmetto Trace Apartments with murder on his mind. He had come to confront his ex-girlfriend, the mother of one of his 12 children, and his intentions were crystal clear from the moment he stepped through the door. "I have to kill you," he told her, his voice cold and determined. These weren't the words of someone making empty threats. This was a man who had already made his decision. His ex-girlfriend stared at him in terror, realizing that the father of her child was serious about ending her life. But fate intervened in the form of Bryce's sister, who happened to be at the apartment that night. She immediately recognized the danger her brother posed and began talking him down, using every ounce of persuasion she could muster. Through her desperate pleas and intervention, she managed to convince him not to pull the trigger. Her quick thinking and courage saved one life that night, though tragically, 3 others would not be so fortunate.
First, chilling details in a Manatee County killing spree leaving 3 people dead. You're watching 10 Tampa Bay. I'm Frank Wiley.
And I'm Carolina. Lead in tonight for Courtney. The Manatee County Sheriff's Office says the suspect was on his way to hurt more people in Georgia before getting into a shootout. Sheriff Rick Wells says this man, Javante Bryce, first went to his sister's apartment where one of his ex-girlfriends was inside. However, his sister was able to talk him out of shooting anyone there. He then fled to a motel where his mother, her boyfriend, and 2 kids were staying.
He walked into that hotel room, looked at the mother and said, "I'm sorry." She asked, "What did you do?" And he shoots her 3 times.
And this map right here showing the locations of all 3 shootings. The Sheriff's Office says Bryce drove toward Georgia and Highland County deputies engaged in a shootout with him. 10 Tampa Bay's Aduri Achumba joining us live now in Manatee County. Aduri, a horrible situation.
Indeed, Frank, it is. And tonight, authorities are telling us that they are yet to release the names of the 3 victims in the shooting spree. But they do say that that before 28-year-old Javante Bryce fired his first shots right here at the Motel 6 behind me, that he had planned to target other people.
It sounded like gunshots. So my husband went out to investigate what was going on, and that's when we heard the commotion from the ladies upstairs.
Guests in the neighboring rooms at the Motel 6 disturbed by the scene that unfolded Monday night. Manatee County Sheriff says the shooter, 28-year-old Javante Bryce, fired several shots at his mother.
Her daughter, I don't know which one it was. Someone please help. Please help me. You know, my mom just got shot. So I told my son to grab some towels. Give me some towels, and I ran up there.
I'm like, oh my God, is the baby okay? Because she was holding a baby when she got shot. They say that he came flying in here in a vehicle and did what he did and left in the vehicle.
Authorities say he then went to a home on 26th Street in Palmetto where he shot his cousin who had just celebrated a birthday as she was leaving a cookout.
The police showed up. They saw the body in front of the garage there in the driveway.
Investigators say Bryce's next deadly stop, his ex-girlfriend and co-parents' home on 51st Street.
He does not shoot or kill the girlfriend, but he shoots and kills the new partner.
Authorities put out a bolo on his car, which was intercepted in Hamilton County near the Georgia state line. They say Bryce was heading to another ex's home to kill her too.
He immediately gets out of the car and starts firing upon them. They return fire, shooting and killing him there in Hamilton County. And that's where everything ends.
Before the shootings began, investigators say Bryce stopped at another location.
When he walked into the apartment, he looked at the ex-girlfriend and said, "I have to kill you." Somehow, the sister was able to talk him down and talk him out of him shooting this ex-girlfriend.
And as you heard Sheriff Wells there, Javante Bryce died in that gunfire exchange with deputies at the Georgia state line. Now tonight, investigators say they are interviewing a woman who was in the car with Bryce throughout this entire shooting spree, and they're trying to get any insight into a motive. They're also trying to determine if she was another victim or if she was an accomplice. Now, they are also looking into several social media posts that Bryce made about the people he targeted before the shooting began. Live in Bradenton, Aduria Chumba, 10 Tampa Bay.
Sequoia knew the truth about their relationship, making her a constant threat to Bryce's carefully maintained public image. Every day she remained alive was another day his secret could be exposed through a careless word, an argument, or simply someone putting the pieces together. The pressure of maintaining this lie, while juggling his other relationships and responsibilities, had been eating away at him. For Bryce, murder seemed like the only solution to guarantee Sequoia's silence permanently. He couldn't risk her revealing their relationship during a family dispute, couldn't trust that she would keep their secret forever, and couldn't bear the thought of his community discovering the truth. So he made the cold calculation that her life was worth less than his reputation, sealing both their fates with that decision. By 10 o'clock that evening, Javante Bryce had already claimed 2 lives, but his killing spree was far from over. His next target was 31-year-old Cheryl Carter, a woman whose only crime was falling in love with one of Bryce's ex-girlfriends. Carter lived on 56th Street East in Bradenton with her new partner, another one of Bryce's former relationships who had moved on and found happiness elsewhere. Cheryl Carter represented everything Bryce couldn't control about his fractured personal life. Here was a woman who had stepped into a relationship with someone he considered his property, someone who had helped his ex-girlfriend build a new life without him. In Bryce's twisted mindset, Carter wasn't just an innocent bystander. She was an obstacle to his sense of ownership over the women in his life. When Bryce arrived at the 56th Street East address, Bradenton police were already in the area, but their presence didn't deter him from his mission. He had come too far and killed too many people to stop now. Carter had no warning, no chance to defend herself, and no understanding of why she had become a target in Bryce's war against anyone who threatened his secrets or challenged his control. Bryce shot Carter before fleeing the scene, leaving her critically wounded. Despite the quick response from emergency medical services, Carter died at a local hospital, becoming the 3rd innocent victim of Bryce's desperate attempt to maintain control over his crumbling world. Her death was perhaps the most senseless of all. She died simply for loving someone Bryce couldn't let go. With 3 women already dead, Javante Bryce wasn't finished with his killing spree. Manatee County detectives quickly learned that Bryce was heading north toward Georgia with a terrifying purpose. He intended to kill yet another person, possibly another ex-girlfriend who lived across state lines. The scope of his planned massacre was becoming clear, and law enforcement realized they were dealing with a man who had completely lost all sense of humanity. Bryce's decision to flee to Georgia revealed the calculated nature of his crimes. This wasn't a crime of passion that had gotten out of hand. This was a methodical elimination of people he viewed as threats to his reputation and control. He had a hit list in his mind, and he was working through it systematically, state by state if necessary. The fact that he was willing to cross state lines to continue his killing spree showed investigators just how dangerous and determined he had become. Bryce wasn't planning to stop until everyone who could expose his secrets or challenge his authority was dead. His flight to Georgia transformed what had started as a local tragedy into a multi-state manhunt, with law enforcement agencies across the Southeast now involved in stopping a man who seemed intent on leaving a trail of bodies wherever he went. As news of the triple homicide spread across law enforcement networks, a massive coordinated response began to take shape. A statewide BOLO, be on the lookout, alert was immediately issued for Bryce's vehicle, with his description and last known direction of travel broadcast to every police department, sheriff's office, and state patrol unit across Florida and Georgia. Multiple law enforcement agencies joined the hunt, understanding that they were chasing a man who had already proven he was willing to kill family members and innocent people without hesitation. The urgency was heightened by the knowledge that Bryce had another potential victim waiting in Georgia, and every minute that passed increased the likelihood of a fourth murder. Hamilton County deputies near the Georgia state line received the alert and began actively searching for Bryce's vehicle. The net was closing around him as law enforcement agencies coordinated their efforts to prevent any more bloodshed. What they didn't know was that Bryce had no intention of being taken alive, setting the stage for a final deadly confrontation. At 1:30 in the morning on Tuesday, June 25th, Hamilton County deputies spotted Javante Bryce's vehicle near the Georgia state line. After hours of coordinated searching across multiple jurisdictions, law enforcement had finally caught up with a man who had terrorized Manatee County just 4.5 hours earlier. The deputies initiated what they hoped would be a routine traffic stop, but they were about to discover that Bryce had no intention of surrendering peacefully. As the patrol car's blue lights flashed behind him, Bryce pulled over on the dark highway. The deputies approached cautiously, knowing they were dealing with a triple murder suspect who had already demonstrated his willingness to kill without hesitation. What they couldn't have anticipated was just how quickly the situation would escalate from a traffic stop to a life-or-death gunfight. The moment Bryce's vehicle came to a complete stop, he immediately exited the car with his weapon drawn. There was no negotiation, no attempt to surrender, and no pause to consider his options. Bryce had made his decision long before the deputies ever spotted his car. He would rather die in a shootout than face the consequences of his actions in a courtroom. Sheriff Rick Wells would later confirm that Bryce opened fire on the deputies without warning, forcing them into a deadly confrontation they hadn't wanted but couldn't avoid. The quiet highway became a battlefield as gunshots echoed through the early morning darkness. Bryce had brought a woman with him during his flight to Georgia, but fortunately, she remained in the vehicle and was not injured during the exchange of gunfire that followed. The Hamilton County deputies had no choice but to return fire as Bryce continued his assault on law enforcement. In the darkness of the early morning hours, muzzle flashes lit up the highway as both sides exchanged gunshots in what would become Bryce's final act of violence. The deputies, trained for exactly these kinds of dangerous situations, responded with precision and professionalism even as bullets flew around them. Bryce's decision to engage in a shootout with law enforcement was the final confirmation of what investigators had suspected all along. This was a man who had completely abandoned any hope of redemption or survival. He had crossed every moral line possible, murdered his own family members, and now he was determined to go out in a blaze of gunfire rather than face justice for his crimes. The shootout lasted only minutes, but it felt like an eternity for the deputies involved. When the gunfire finally stopped, Javante Bryce lay dead on the asphalt, his reign of terror finally brought to an end. The man who had started the evening by threatening his ex-girlfriend and ended it by murdering 3 innocent women was no longer a threat to anyone. His death marked the conclusion of one of the most violent and disturbing crime sprees in Manatee County history. The Javante Bryce case demonstrates how shame and secrecy can transform into deadly weapons when someone becomes desperate to protect their reputation. Bryce's intimate relationship with his cousin represented more than just a moral transgression. It was a secret that could have destroyed his standing in his community, affected his relationships with his 12 children, and branded him with a stigma that would follow him forever. When people build their entire identity around maintaining a certain image, the fear of exposure can drive them to unthinkable extremes. Bryce couldn't bear the thought of being known as someone who violated one of society's strongest taboos. The psychological pressure of keeping this secret, combined with his already complicated web of relationships, created a perfect storm of desperation and violence. This case shows us that secrets don't just hurt the people keeping them. They can become weapons that destroy innocent lives. When someone becomes convinced that murder is preferable to shame, they've crossed a line that makes them capable of killing anyone they perceive as a threat to their carefully constructed facade. Bryce's sister recognized that something was wrong when she observed him acting strange in the days before the murders. This kind of behavioral change is often the first indicator that someone is under extreme psychological pressure. Family members and friends should take notice when someone they know well begins acting out of character, especially if they seem agitated, paranoid, or unusually stressed. The escalation from threats to actual violence happened quickly in this case, but there were warning signs. Bryce's direct threat to his ex-girlfriend, "I have to kill you," should have been taken seriously and reported to law enforcement immediately. Too often, people dismiss threats from family members or former partners as empty words, but domestic violence statistics show that these threats are often precursors to actual violence. If someone you know is making threats, acting strangely, or seems consumed by fear of exposure or shame, don't ignore these red flags. Contact law enforcement. Encourage the person to seek professional help and take steps to protect potential victims. Early intervention can prevent tragedies like this one. This story shows how quickly situations can escalate when someone becomes desperate to hide their secrets. In just over 4 hours, Javante Bryce went from making threats to committing triple homicide, proving that we can never underestimate how dangerous shame and desperation can make someone. Subscribe for more true crime analysis, where we break down the psychology behind these cases and explore how they could have been prevented. Let me know in the comments. What warning signs do you think people missed in this case? Your insights help us all learn to recognize dangerous situations before they turn deadly.